Howdy folks, Dr. Will Wong here. Let me impart some important information to you that most of the folks who've been following my work are familiar with, but in the main, most people out there are completely ignorant that this is going on. So let me read you a question that I got from a nuclear physicist that I know. And the email starts, Howdy Will, do you have any recommendations for multivitamin? I've been taking multivitamins for a long time, but my brands have been bought out by big, unscrupulous companies that I do not trust. Is there a brand you know of that offers a good product? If you made one, I would obviously buy yours. And my answer is howdy. The only two multi-products I have liked were both taken off the market for not selling well years ago. They were true multis that understood that you could not squeeze physiologically meaningful amounts of a bunch of nutrients into a single pill or capsule. Every nutrient, like any drug, works on a threshold. Below the threshold, there is no physiologic action. Above the threshold, there is a physiologic response. So it goes for antibiotics and indeed all medications, goes for vitamins, minerals, herbs, etc. So some is not better than none. Some may be the same as none. Folks didn't understand why they needed to take a scoopful of powder of one brand that I endorsed a few years ago and several capsules of another brand that I sent folks to when the first company stopped making theirs. I will never make a multi because most folks will never understand the physiologic concept because they're so used to one-a-days. As an example, when testing vitamins and minerals at sub-threshold levels, that's how medical research proves that vitamins and minerals don't work. So for right now, I can't point you to a good multi because I haven't found one. Be well and God bless. Will. If you're old enough to remember the vitamin E wars that took place back in the 1960s and 70s when Dr. Tom Curran from the University of Southern Illinois came out with all of his positive research on vitamin E, and then a whole bunch of cardiologists did a whole bunch of research work on vitamin E and said about how beneficial it was to the heart. Then there were a slew of studies showing that vitamin E did nothing for the heart. And if you buried yourself into the studies, if you didn't just take a look at the abstract, but if you looked at how the study was created, how the study was laid out, what they were supposed to do, and how much vitamin E they were supposed to use, two things were obvious. First thing was that the initial negative studies used a vitamin E that was dead. Vitamin E back in the early to mid-60s was extracted from cold-pressed wheat germ oil. The process had to be cold or the heat would kill the vitamin E. So on purpose, some folks extracted something they said was vitamin E using a heat-pressed process that rendered the vitamin E inactive, and they administered as much as they could want to a heart patient and had no benefits, so the studies were very negative. Then, once vitamin E started being made via fermentation, instead of processing it out from wheat germ oil, which was very expensive, the fermentation was really cheap. Fermentation produced a very good bioidentical vitamin E. Then they started using sub-threshold doses of vitamin E in the research. Vitamin E has a threshold. It doesn't do much under 400 IUs. So under 400 IUs, you get none of the good actions of vitamin E. Above 400 IUs, you start getting action. And above 1,500 to 3,000 IUs, you get all the action. Same thing with vitamins A and D, which back in the 60s, folks used to take cod liver oil from the 1940s to the 1950s to improve their immunity. Cod liver oil had a ton of vitamin A and vitamin D, and it was widely acknowledged that it was the A and the D that was producing the increase in immunity. Well, medicine didn't want you to have increased immunity because it cost them money. You didn't get sick. They didn't sell drugs. They didn't do medical procedures. So throughout the late 1960s, they badmouthed the hell out of A and D, apparently even going so far as to really lowering the RDA for D to the point where it was useless, with the scare tactic that I honestly fell for, because this is what I was taught in school, that much above the RDA for D would be toxic to the liver, which it turns out it isn't. And I confess that I made the mistake of believing that for years. So again, using sub-threshold levels of nutrients in their studies, they proved that no, vitamin A and D didn't increase immunity. And then in the 1980s, marathoners went completely the other way on vitamin A and did harm themselves, but that's a whole different story. So again, to make my point of this little chat, it's better to take vitamins and minerals individually at levels that you can make above threshold than it is to take multis, because the multis have so much stuff packed into them that they're useless, because there isn't a damn single nutrient in a multi that's above threshold level for physiologic action. German medicine came up with a principle, and it's really a good guideline to evaluate the possible efficiency of any herb, vitamin, or mineral product from. If it has more than 5 ingredients in a pill or a capsule, there can't be enough of anything in there to really make a significant difference if you take it. So you'll see all these protestosterone supplements with 10, 20 little different herbs in them. And yeah, each individual herb, if you took a half a teaspoon of it, would probably do great things for you. But the little tiny amounts, the 10, 20, 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams or something in a capsule isn't going to do much for you, because none of it is going to be above the level at which it gets a response. Remember, if a low level of antibiotic doesn't kill your infection, if you have to take above a certain level of antibiotic to kill an infection, if you have to take a certain above of blood pressure medicine to get an effect on blood pressure, if you have to take a certain amount of an antidepressant to get the antidepressant effect, the same thing that holds for drugs holds for vitamins, minerals, and herbs. You have to attain a threshold level for physiologic action. And that's why most multivitamins and minerals out there are completely useless. Now, just because I said that, don't go whole hog and start taking handfuls of those multivitamins and minerals trying to get a threshold level of action, because there are other things involved in those preparations than just that. And we can talk about some of the stuff that's absorbed but never utilized and just accumulates in the body some other time. And on that note, I'll sign off. I'll chat with you again next time. Be well, and God bless.